topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, welcome to the Bill Martinez Show. Great to have you with us, sharing a part of your day. For more info, you can check it out, BillMartinezShow.com. Our next guest I've been looking forward to. He's kind of, in a way, as we go through his life history and that, you might think it's a little bit like Forrest Gump. Because he's just been right there. I mean, right in the middle of history, and he's been able to document it. And it's such a blessing what he has done with his new book, How Do We Get Out of Here? Half a Century of Laughter and Mayhem of the American Spectator. R. Emmett Tyrrell Jr., we call him Bob. He's the founder and publisher of the American Spectator. He spent decades as one of the most influential voices in conservative media. His memoir, How Do We Get Out of Here? Half a Century of Laughter and Mayhem at the American Spectator, from Bobby Kennedy to Donald J. Trump, has just been released. With his signature wit and insight, Tyrrell looks back on his long experiences from RFK Sr. to Donald Trump and everyone else in between. Bob, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
It's good to be with you.
Well, I got to tell you, in the jacket, it refers to you as irrepressible. And I think you're the first irrepressible author I've ever had the honor to speak with.
Well, I'll try to be irrepressible.
So, I appreciate, Bob, this must have been a lot of fun for you to, put your memoir together. And I imagine it's one of those projects that took you years plus a lifetime, right?
Well, lifetime to begin with, yes. Mm-hmm. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of people that write a memoir, they blubber and cry about the terrible life that was handed to them. But frankly, I've had a wonderful time. Even when the Clintons ran up a bill against of lawyer for lawyers of $1 million, I still had a good time.
Mm-hmm. Well, was it because you didn't take it all that serious, or what kept you, or just because of your irrepressible nature, I guess?
Well, I didn't become a writer to be grumpy and gloomy. I became a writer to be happy and happy-go-lucky, and I think I've done a pretty good job at that.
Well, and as you've seen in your profession as a writer, that was your ambition, and as you've seen journalism evolve here, I guess part of my heart has been towards journalism as well, as a broadcast journalist, Bob, and it breaks my heart to realize the current status quo of journalism today, that I believe is abandoned its right to exist as is established in our Constitution.
Well, I mean, we don't need the First Amendment. I don't know. We don't need many of those amendments. These guys do anything they want to do anyway.
Right. Yeah, sadly, but
the guys and the guy-yeses. We've got to remember, it's now filled with, the world of journalism is filled with the male and the female. And what do you call a female guy? A gaius, I guess.
I don't know. I may have to go and seek the advice of a Supreme Court justice, or maybe not, because she's not sure what a woman is. So, I mean, it is confusing in the world in which we live in. I find myself, maybe you do too as well, is that, it's kind of like, our old friend and motivational speaker, Zig Ziglar, would say that with some people, it's a Dickens of a time to explain them to others, because it's like they need a translator.
Well, I'm here to translate for them.
Okay. Well, good enough. Well, it was interesting when I started reading your book. The first thing you open up with was your experience with, Bobby Kennedy Sr. You're on a stage behind him, all by yourself. Uh, he's giving a speech, and there you are. And I'm amazed in that situation, envisioning that situation, because a couple of weeks later, he's in Los Angeles, and of course, we know what's happened. And at the time, I was class president of a community college in Ventura, California, and had just met Bobby Kennedy, was doing some work on his campaign. And of course, like everybody else around the world, was shocked when he was assassinated.
Well, yes, it was a very sad moment. In fact, historians have said that was the first shot fired by terrorists in what was to become an era of terror.
Right. And the things that's amazing, and you as a journalist and having an inquiring mind, it amazes me that to this day we still really never got down to the bottom of Sirhan, did we?
Oh, I think we did. I mean, I think Sirhan committed murder, and I think that murder is about to be committed again by another Kennedy if the Secret Service isn't brought in to watch Bob Kennedy, Bob Kennedy Jr.
Exactly.
I've been after the Clinton White House or the Biden White House for months to give that man a Secret Service detail. Yeah. And it's astonishing that he's not getting it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. I couldn't believe it. And there was already an attempt at assassination. Thank God he had his own bodyguards, right?
Yep. And those are costing him a bundle.
Yeah. I mean, this is absurd. I mean, unfortunately, where we are right now, the whole political process has been weaponized. Hillary Clinton gave us a warning in 2016. Interesting that she thought she was the target, but said quite clearly that, well, here in America, we don't jail our political opponents, in such a thing. But it seems the Biden administration is willing to break through the glass ceiling of any kind of tradition and civility.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Bobby's up to 22%. Of the popularity with the Democrats, he might be able to take this guy Biden on.
Right. Well, what do you think? I mean, this is a third party situation with a lot of force, as you say, behind him. We haven't seen anything like that since Ross Perot. And some people, I mean, I hear both sides of the spectrum here, Bob, where they're saying he could affect Biden more than Trump or Trump more than Biden. Where do you see the divide?
Well, I don't really know where the divide is, but I think that Bob Kennedy has run a good race thus far, and I'm anxious to see how well he can do. Yeah. I think he deserves a chance. And I think I can't imagine the Democrats being anything but embarrassed by not extending Secret Service assistance to Bob Kennedy.
Well, I think, for the Democratic Party, do you see Bobby Kennedy as being one to, I guess, rebirth the old Democratic blue dog Democrats, as opposed to where the Democratic Party is right now?
Well, I think I don't know he doesn't want to be pigeonholed in one hole or another. So I'll stay out of it.
Okay. All right.
I don't think he cares to have the support of a conservative right winger, but he's got my support for that position, and we'll see what happens.
Well, certainly what has worked for him and against him and it's been his long, consistent passion about vaccines, about big pharma, and and I believe that his is a voice that needs to be heard. It needs to be, considered in the calculation when it comes to healthcare, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it deserves to be taken seriously. However, I must tell you, with my left arm up here, I got a blast of vaccine in the left arm yesterday, and it feels pretty good.
Oh, you're doing okay, huh?
I'm not. I'm not sick yet.
Well, don't say yet. Who was it? Was somebody just got? I can't remember who it was, but they got a flu shot, and they got very sick. It was a celebrity. I can't remember which one it was. And recently, I went in for a medical exam, and they had the needle there. They were getting ready to give me a flu shot, and of course, I've resisted a flu shot forever, much to my mother's disdain, I might add. And she asked me, she goes, "Have you ever had any adverse reaction to the flu shot?" I said, "Well, I got the flu," and I said, "That's why you're not going to put that needle in me. I trust my immune system. So far, so good. Thank God, all these years, I'm hanging in there without a flu shot. So I'm not necessarily a proponent for flu shots, but like anything, I say it's an individual choice. And this is what I love about America, is that we still have freedom of choice.
Right.
So from, let's go through the book here, Bob, because, from Bobby Kennedy, I mean, it's a walk through history for you, and a walk through history, for all of us. And as you start out, you say, you ask the question, how do we get out of here? So in your characterization, what is it that we need to get out of?
Well, I took the title from Bob Kennedy,
Mm-hmm.
and he was asking me how he gets out of here, and I walked him over to the exit of down the steps,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
he reached out and shook my hand, and I reached down and handed him a Reagan for President button. And as I say, 4 weeks later, he was dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the deal is, it's kind of interesting, that question, how do we get out of here? That echoes through the current day, because that's what we hear from a president all the time, is how do I get out of here? Maybe that's what, now you may have put yourself in a position to be, Joe Biden's wrangler, to get him off the stage. He seems to need some help these days. Just being a little cynical.
Well, at any rate, I've enjoyed Joe for 40 years. He's been lots of fun. So I want him to continue being lots of fun for me. And that's,
Well,
the way I think a lot of journalists view him.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say lots of fun, you mean, topic for your writing?
Yes, he's every time he opens his mouth, he puts his foot in it.
Oh, well, it's the challenge is right now, as you know, Bob, he is the commander in chief, and we're as close to World War III as we've ever been in our lifetime.
Well, let's move. I thought this was a happy hour.
It is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Okay, it is a happy hour, but we went down that road. So forgive me if that question. I'll take that question back.
I'm not good with glum issues.
Okay. Well, let's talk about in the next chapter you address the sidewalks of Chicago.
Yes, well, that's where I'm from, Chicago. I'm embarrassed to say it nowadays with their mayoral candidates, but I am from Chicago, and I think Chicago has a wonderful record of setting people up to be knocked down. Mm-hmm. So I think the present mayor is a good guy to knock down.
Well, once again, I mean, you look at it, through your journalistic eye to see, okay, what is it that you can point out in fulfilling your objective as a journalist in speaking, speaking to power and holding power accountable, right?
Well, I like to think we do. Certainly, we held Bill Clinton to task. In
Mhm.
fact, Hillary Clinton, when she ran for office, I thought we did a pretty good job of messing her up. And Tom Wolfe said she would have been elected president if it hadn't been for the American Spectator. And I think that's true.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about, you founded and of course have been the publisher of American Spectator. As you write in the book, I mean, this was an outgrowth of what you were doing in college, right?
Yes. But I really never got involved until after this encounter with Bob Kennedy on stage.
Uh-huh.
That's when my career took off.
Mhm. Yeah, it was amazing that, I mean, here it is in that era, we think back what was going on, with Vietnam, we had, uh, universities in an uproar, the Kent shooting, on and on. And I mean, this was an era of, assassinations that the country was going through. So, there you are. So quite the contrast from backstage by yourself behind Bobby Kennedy, and then your career takes off like a rocket, huh?
Yes, it took off like a rocket. And I've had a lot of fun ever since. There's never been a dull moment at the American Spectator.
Well, and when you founded the Spectator, um, you know, as you laid it out and cast your vision for those that joined the team, what did you tell them that what you wanted to accomplish with the American Spectator?
Well, I wanted our writers to come in and be themselves.
Hmm.
They were all interesting. They are all interesting writers, and they bring a different slant to every issue. And I'm delighted to have them say just what they think.
Hmm. Do you think the writers of today are of the same caliber as they were when you started?
No, I don't think so. They are. We had a lively collection of writers early on. We had Milton Friedman.
Mm.
We had Paul Johnson. We had Malcolm Muggeridge. We had a very interesting collection of writers, and they're not going to be duplicated. I can tell you that.
Well, fortunately, we have their writings, right, in archive, and we can go back and revisit them and enjoy their creative genius. And maybe for journalism schools going forward, maybe they could reconnect with some of those writings and maybe alter their perspective and rise to a whole new level that could be better for everybody concerned.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. I'm dying to see what the younger generation comes up with, how they can manage to speak out of both sides of their mouths or whatever they're doing. They're
Right.
hard to figure. It's hard to figure the younger generation out.
Well, it's been tough on them for a little bit here, Bob. I mean, schools used to be universities you could go to, and yeah, it ran the full gamut, and you could have open conversations. You could have a good laugh. Now the universities have gone through that period of time where comedians are fearful. They feel like they're going into a combat zone, and maybe this is just part of what will define the future for them, because there's nothing like experience to help define what you like and what you prefer.
Yeah, and are you suggesting that the young people today have experience?
Well, you can't help but live life and have experience. I mean, it may not be something that you might endear, but that's what helps form the preference. Based on the experience that you go through, and do you want to be depressed and unhappy, or can you sit through a comedian's concert these days and just laugh, and because as the Bible would say, is laughter is good medicine, and I think we need more medicine.
Well, I'm waiting for it.
Mhm. So for you in that period of time, I mean, as you say, you had a very hearty and based on our conversation here, I can tell you had a very positive attitude about things, and it must have been a lot of fun to work with you.
Well, I hope it was. I hope it's still fun to work with me.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time. I'll tell you this. Some of the strength of my book memoirs is things that I talk about that aren't readily recognized. Ronald Reagan was a close personal friend of mine, and he was also the finest president we had in the post-war period. And he had 3 or 4 things he wanted to do, but one of the most important things for him to do was he wanted to change the culture. And he called me in to help him with the changing of the culture. And we worked on that for, I suppose for 8 years.
Wow.
And we got nowhere. We got nowhere because Ronald Reagan had important things to do, primarily to cut taxes, primarily to end the Cold War.
Cold War, exactly.
And when he turned it to culture, which is essential, culture is essential to politics. He tried very hard to change it, and I worked with him very hard, and we couldn't get anywhere because the assistant presidents around Ronald Reagan were not always loyal to Ronald Reagan. And also, but he did pay me back. He paid me back at the end of his presidency by coming to my house for dinner. And I paid him back by playing the music of Frederick the Great. I am the only citizen outside the White House that introduced the president to the music of Frederick the Great. That's one of my great achievements.
one of many, but wow, how wonderful to be able to do that. So I take it he was very eager to receive the music of Frederick the Great.
Yes, but it did take him two screwdrivers to get through the music.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I see that as a positive. But when you talk about changing the culture, and you might say, he wasn't able to do it then, but here we are, all these years later, and all that we've experienced. And I agree with you, Bob, in a sense. What you're saying is that, politics should be downstream culture, but for some reason I see it as a bit of a shift, that you've got, politics influencing culture more than the other way around. Do you see it that way?
Yes, they try, and we call that the culture smog at the American Spectator. It's a culture that's completely befogged by the politics of the other side. And that's what Ronald Reagan worried about. He wanted to see if he couldn't affect politics or culture with a conservative twist. And it's the only thing that he really wanted, but he failed to do.
Well, it's an ambitious job, because you're talking, how do you get into the hearts of men, right? I mean, because this is a hard issue at that point when you're talking about culture shift, right?
Well, yeah, but Roosevelt did it in the 30s. Kennedy did it in the early 60s. Ronald Reagan should have been able to do more than he did. But as I said, he had the assistant presidents to deal with.
Right.
A handful.
Well, and not to mention, it wasn't that he had necessarily a pro-supportive media. I mean, there's some similarities between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump in terms of adverse reporting, right?
Well, that's one of the things I talk about toward the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald should have taken a lesson from Ronald Reagan and not kept punching back. He should have soared over these people that have been bedeviling him for years. And he didn't. He fell for it, and he kept punching back and punching back. And it certainly damaged his standing his standing in history.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and with comments that he made and picking fights that you think, why are you picking that fight? What is it? Like with John McCain, the guy's gone. Why bring that up? I mean, what have you got to gain on it? Is it your desire to be so right about everything that nothing else matters?
Well, it's a mystery to me as to how it ran through.
Makes two of us. Go ahead.
How it ran through his head that anything to say about a POW. And I knew John McCain, and he was a wonderful patriot and a brave individual, and he deserved better.
Right. Well, and like you said, these battles that were so unnecessary. What was it like? I mean, in going in after Reagan, of course, we have George Bush the first. So you go in through his administration. What did you see there?
Well, I frankly felt George H.W. Bush was a terrific gentleman, a great patriot, and a great gentleman.
Yeah.
And I had dinner with him or lunch with him at the White House when he announced, just before he announced that he was going to raise taxes. And I told him, I said, don't raise taxes. It's a terrible mistake. The Democrats are just going to spend the money that you give them.
Right.
They'll just spend all that money, all much more so than they're now spending it. And he didn't take my advice, and he left office unceremoniously.
Exactly. Well, and you talk about political bankruptcy, self-inflicted, and it was too bad because, look at what happened when he left, and, he was doing some positive things, and he put a country into the hands of Bill Clinton. That was, and I think that was a very positive handoff, to Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton benefited from the policies in which George H.W. had put into play, right?
Well, and Ronald Reagan too.
Yes, exactly.
They had done a good job.
Yeah.
And Clinton got anything that he could have done well. He got sidetracked by Monica Lewinsky. And sexual scandals in general.
Right.
I mean, in the book, I talk about the scandals that he courted. And one of the scandals that he courted was drugs. It's never been brought out how Bill Clinton fooled around with drugs, but he did. And his brother was caught doing it too. And Bill has survived, but he took a lighthearted view of drugs, is the way he took a lighthearted view of much of his presidency.
And that's amazing because it was something that he had ambition for. He wanted to be a great president, and he's given this gift. And but that's the tough thing, being in power. And obviously there was something, missing that would make him vulnerable to an intern.
Yeah. Well, he was vulnerable to dozens of interns and others in the White House. He had a menagerie to deal with. That's another story about Bill Clinton. He had much more than one or two or three floozies. He had dozens of floozies.
Well, there's just something about being president. I mean, we talked very lightly about JFK, and of course, all these years later, you hear more and more of the escapades and the secret rendezvous, through back doors there at the White House and that. And I think that
don't forget the swimming pool.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. I mean, how do you tell your grandkids about this, Bob?
I'm not talking to my grandkids about this, about as I represent the the Clinton 8 years, I represented as a huge black hole. We don't discuss it at the Tyrrell household.
Okay, so it doesn't come up during Thanksgiving dinner or anything like that, right?
There are some things that the children are known not to talk about.
Okay, I understand. So here you've got the transference of power from Bill Clinton, and we get the controversy of the 2000 election, Al Gore hanging chads, and George W. Bush is elected president. Talk about that.
What about hanging? I lost you with the hanging chads.
Remember the controversy in the count, the voter count they had here in Florida. I'm in Florida, so hanging chads is still pretty much part of the DNA of the state here. When you talk about not wanting to talk about the black hole of the Clinton administration, sometimes people they get a little all of a sudden they get Tourette's or something when they hear hanging chads here in Florida. But remember, they were checking, they had all these vote counting officials looking over ballots and seeing if the part of the ballot had been broken clearly, and you had all this hanging chad controversy in trying to come up with a proper count to figure out who won Florida, and whoever won Florida was going to be the president of the United States.
Right. And I believe that it was that George W. was elected fair and square.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely close.
Just as Biden was elected fair and square in the last election.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you? Well, I don't want to go down the controversy with you on that. I'll try and stay out of that dark hole. But still, there are many people that still question, and I don't know if there could ever be a final say on the election. We investigated January 6th, but for some reason we didn't want to investigate what caused January 6th.
Yes, well, I don't think much about that. What should I be thinking about?
Well, no, I mean, that's fine. I mean, we're talking about your experience, and as you've gone through life and been able to be in the middle of all these political waters. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about George W. What did you appreciate most about his presidency?
Well, I appreciated his use of the military, and he used the military quite wisely. I thought he was a good president. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a great president, but I thought he was I wasn't as good as his father, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. He represented another step down from the high quality of George H.W. Bush, the high quality of Ronald Reagan. He represented a step down. And of course, now we have a terrific decline in the presidency. We'll be lucky if we can get out of this mess.
Well, hence the book, How Do We Get Out of Here? Maybe somebody might go back to the first chapter again. But like all things that happen in history, thank God they don't stay there, do they, Bob? I mean, they move on. And, as others have said before, when you think of the cumulative intelligence and talent of 340 million people, it gives me a lot of hope and faith that, America has gone through some really tough times through its history. And every time we go through a tough time, we say, oh, this is the worst. This is the worst. But, you've gone through it, your decades of experience here, and you've seen the country rebound time and again, have you not?
Yes, and I think it will rebound again. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Well, I'm right with you. You say you liked what George W. Bush did with the military. I thought it was a tough situation. I mean, because here he was, he came into this presidency, and I think like most presidents, it's not like anybody comes in and says, well, I'm going to be a wartime president. It just happens to you, doesn't it?
Yes, and do you remember Bill Clinton? He was so upset that George got to be a wartime president, and he wanted to be a wartime president, which is about the last thing that a draft dodger would ever.
You imagine. Exactly. Yeah. Well, actually, he was a wartime president, but it was in the White House with somebody that was near and dear to him. He experienced war, but not the kind of war that I think he hoped for. Just as a sidebar.
Yeah, he was my favorite. He was not my favorite president, actually. Mm-hmm. I think that my favorite president is the present president. I mean, he might yet find himself in deep doo-doo for his son's liabilities. Mm-hmm. So I'm keeping my eye on Biden right now.
Yeah. I know when they were first talking about $20 million of corruption, I just couldn't imagine, Bob. I don't know about you, but we understand as best we can, unless you've been in that position with that kind of power and influence. And, it really speaks of, kind of the traditions and the paradigm that's established there in the Beltway that would accommodate, these kind of shenanigans, the things that cause taxpayers to go, wait a minute, how come Nancy Pelosi got so wealthy, as a congresswoman? How do, some of these elected officials on $170,000 a year, 10 years later are multimillionaires?
A better example is Biden, actually.
Yes.
He never had any other job but at the public trough in his life. And he's certainly a multimillionaire today.
Well, we're talking with R. Emmett Tyrrell. We call him Bob, and his new book, How Do We Get Out of Here? Half a Century of Laughter and Mayhem of the American Spectator, from Bobby Kennedy to Donald J. Trump. I like the idea that the subtitle is Mayhem, because again, it maintains a balance. And I think that, this is where, in revisiting what our culture has gone through, is that maybe we've just taken it too seriously, you think?
Well, no, I don't think you can ever take a politician too seriously. They're in my view, a lot of these politicians are the enemies of the free people, mm-hmm. and they've got to be watched very attentively.
Exactly. Well, our founding fathers warned us of that, and they gave us a document that if we follow it, it produces pretty good outcome, doesn't it?
I think it does. It's amazing to sit back and look at the Constitution, how it's held up over the years. It's an amazing document.
Well, and then you have these forces that are doing everything they can. Barack Obama spoke very directly and said that, the Constitution is elastic, so it's a living and breathing document. And I think that brain bruised some people, especially conservatives, when they first heard that. What did you think?
Well, I think that he's the president who leaves no shadow. And I think that I've sent writers out to investigate why is it that Barack Obama has never been photographed with a shadow behind him. And you might want to look into that too.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you come up with? Why there's no shadow behind him?
They keep looking and searching. They keep coming back to the office and they said, no shadow. I said, keep looking, keep looking.
Unbelievable. What does he have special lights in his back or something that keeps his shadow away or something? I don't know. That's interesting. You know, that's gonna keep me up at night. Thank you very much. I'm gonna be thinking about that. Along with our audience, they're gonna say, "Oh, thanks, Bill, for having Bob on the show. Now I'm looking for Barack Obama's shadow."
we could set a whole task force.
Well, we will conscript citizen journalists all over the country to look for Barack Obama's shadow. In fact, that'll be your next book, In Search of Barack Obama's Shadow. What do you think?
I'm happy with the present book I've just finished. Frankly, it tired me out.
Yeah, I know. For people who've done this, they have written books, and I think I've got 3 or 4 outlined myself. Yeah, and it is quite wearing, and I'm impressed with people. In fact, I was just talking with somebody else. They've written 60 books. I'm going, how do you do that? I mean, you're just spitting them out like biscuits. I guess they just get into that kind of routine. But I think the last guy I spoke with, it was an 8-year project. That's a long time to be writing a book.
Well, my present memoirs took 5 years, and that was a pretty long time too.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the opening is like 5 years plus a lifetime, obviously, because you've got a lifetime of memories here. In terms of fun, during history, what was the most fun time for you, Bob?
Well, the most fun time was the Clinton years. The most important time was the Reagan years. Ronald Reagan and I and numerous other people, we really tried to do something, and Ronald Reagan was the greatest president in the post-war period, and he did a lot. The only one thing I wish he had done a little better at was affecting the culture.
Yeah.
If he had done that, he would have been the perfect president.
Well, you had this sense with his leadership that he really cared about the people. He connected with the people in a very unique way. I mean, it wasn't, Bill Clinton, where Bill Clinton had his charm and, kind of his influence and style about him. You knew it was a bit of showtime with Clinton. At least I did, in my observation. But with Reagan, it seemed very sincere and very heartfelt.
Well, you're right. He was a very sincere man, and we trusted his word, and he brought us a long way. I wish he were our president today.
Amen. Yeah, I'm with you. Getting back, I want to revisit Donald Trump. We've got a couple of minutes left here, Bob, and I'm so thankful for your time. And again, your book, How do we get out of here? This is quite entertaining, especially for those of us that, lived during the same period of time, and to get your perspective. As you say, there's moments, yes, that are poignant, that will stop you, but there's also those moments that will, put a smile on your face and cause you to laugh. And I think, at the end of the day, with any project or anything you produce, whether it happens to be at the American Spectator, like my old mentor used to say to me, that our goal when I was on the air behind the microphone in Los Angeles, California, he said, your number one job is to elicit a positive emotional response with your audience. And, certainly your book is doing that. It's done that for me. I know it'll do that for our audience when they read it as well. The Donald Trump you knew, what would you want to communicate to our audience about Donald Trump that, isn't necessarily formed by the 95% of negative media characterization and reporting on this president?
Well, I'd ask them to take the American people to take a look at the first 2 or 3 years in office.
Mhm.
They were unmatched.
Yeah.
He was as good as he said he was. However, he got entangled in all this backbiting and fighting and all of this, and it's probably ruined his chances of reelection.
Mhm. Well, it's a tough situation. I think that, again, he didn't know the field of play as smart as he is. And I got to tell you personally, I thought when, Ross Perot came on the scene, I thought, to see a true chief executive officer come into the political sphere, that there were some advantages there. And Donald Trump, in a way, for me, helped me appreciate and confirm the idea that we really need somebody in that position who truly is a chief executive officer. And I think this is part of the brilliance that he brought to the office. Unfortunately, when you come into a bureaucracy that's so well established, and also let's not forget what Barack Obama had done in terms of converting, I think it was about 4,000 of his of his people, and he transferred them into the bureaucracy, in a sense kind of setting them up as moles within the next administration, because Donald Trump, he didn't know it, but he was going to have to deal with them, like you had made reference before about somebody torpedoing a president's efforts.
Well, yeah, but which president are we talking about now? I've gotten confused.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just making reference to Donald Trump, that he had to, deal with, the bureaucrats that, that Barack Obama had set up in motion, and that, I think it's hard. I mean, you got what, 100 days or so when you take over, and you're an outsider and you don't know who these people are. And so I think that Donald Trump really had his hands full. But as a chief executive officer, to your point, he was able to accomplish things that, we thought were possible. And we started to realize that and benefit from it for 3 years until the pandemic came.
Yes. He had the makings of being a great president. I just think he screwed things up toward the end.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what's next, Bob?
I think we're going to have to watch the Middle East. That's going to be a very dangerous situation for years to come.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been there, and we're coming down to it. It has put us in a situation where we're closer to World War III than we've ever been in our lifetime. You're exactly right, and that everything has gone global. I mean, whether you're talking about an airport in Russia, whether you're talking about just about every country in Europe, what's happening in the United States, our universities, and that it's quite revealing to see the reaction on the streets here, particularly in America.
Well, thank God for the Israelis. They're kicking the Hamas's rear ends, and it may end faster than we think. But right now, I think it's going to be a long haul.
Mm-hmm. Well, but for this country, Bob, I'm going to let you summarize and wrap things up here in terms of what's next, post Joe Biden.
Well, first of all, we're going to have to get a Republican elected. And I think we can do so. Mm-hmm. I don't think I think we've seen the end of the Biden administration just about coming up in front of us. We'll have to see. And if this poisonous atmosphere continues, we're going to have to see what we can do about it. Mm-hmm. But I think that we'll win in the next election, and I think we'll have a chance then of fumigating the White House.
Right. Well, and maybe we can encourage the Republicans, conservatives to get on the same page. What do you think?
Well, they've got a big problem there. That's, as I said in the book, they were they dealt with each other in a friendly way. They formed a movement that really worked, and then it broke down when they gave up on cooperation with each other. I don't know if that can ever be the administration. Well, the administration of, well, let me put it this way: we've got a long way to go before we can say that we've reborn the conservative movement. And
Mhm.
that's what we need. We need the conservative movement, and it's not there.
But there's some positive pieces, though, Bob, that I'm hearing you speak of in your book and what we've talked about this afternoon. It's getting some leadership that can glue and connect these dots and remind people of what the vision of conservatism is all about and champion the cause once again. Bob Tyrrell, I cannot thank you enough. You've been very gracious to me and to our audience to come on and talk about your book. How do we get out of here? Half a century of laughter and mayhem at the American Spectator, from Bobby Kennedy to Donald J. Trump. Bob, again, thank you so much for being with us. Take care.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
All right. Our thanks to our Emmett Tyrrell Jr., and we call him Bob, and his book, How Do We Get Out of Here? Good fun and a great walk through history. You're gonna enjoy going through this. This is a lot of fun. So hopefully you've been blessed. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing a part of your day. For more info and how to be a part of this mighty movement to return to God, that's really what this is all about. I mean, if we're gonna get this country back on track, we need to go back to the one who started it all, who gave us the idea of this great American idea and blessed us with it. We must return to God. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you his peace. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care.